Hello, and welcome to a special segment of the already memorable Stalktober event. Tonight, and for 4 more parts after this one, I will be relaying the start of Clutching Daggers. Now, this assortment of connected tales is quite special for a few reasons, but most importantly, they're quite recent in development. And they're incredibly numerous. Fascinatingly so, and without further travail, go on, grab a fulfilling snack, settle into your favorite spot, get all warm and comfortable, and listen closely to Clutching Daggers, Part 1. He rose up through the now translucent floor, feeling as if he were passing through a layer of fabric that were also in some way clinging cobwebs, without once being held by the material. He readied his pair of daggers for whatever creature or maddening puzzle would attempt to stagger his ascension. Hello! A little pulsing, floating bit of light came up to hover just out of reach at his eye level. Might I inquire as to your name, aspirant? The little ball of light flashed through dozens of colors, stopping on a dark green hue. He found the little light calming and reassuring, so even though he was hesitant after his first experiences, he chose to trust this little hovering orb, at least a little bit. Nictus Dagvir. Nictus sheathed one of his daggers, as he kept the little light in view and shifted away from the entry point. You have nothing to fear, Nictus Dagvir. This is a hub. You may rest and exchange points here. The light kept its distance, but in the same act made sure to follow along, just out of reach. Just used Nictus. The light bobbed in acquiescence. At least he got that impression, but it didn't speak up. It seemed to be waiting for him to speak. What are these points you've mentioned? I'm glad you have asked. They are based on your performances and ability to solve puzzles within the trials, things you accomplish within the test, and items you choose to carry on your person can be traded for points. It flew across the room, landing upon a pedestal that rose up from the floor in the rather confined space. This is where you exchange your points for objects, food, or services. Be warned, almost everything you purchase has an exchange price and a maintenance fee attached to it. If you cannot pay the secondary fee, the item in question will be rescinded from your care. Nictus walked over to the pedestal. I can purchase anything here, he asked of the tiny orb of dark forest green light. Oh yes, if it is available in your sector. Purchasing from other sectors has its own cost and fee attached. Nictus put his other dagger back in its sheath without securing it, just in case, to interact with the terminal that materialized out of the plant-like structure of the pedestal. How many points do I have right now? I'm afraid not many, aspirant. You took considerably longer than most to exit from your first trial. Each life and day spent within the tribulations has a cost attached to it. You spent most of your initial allotment exploring as you chose to. You only have 307 points remaining to your name. You could trade one of the daggers or their sheaths for a considerable sum. They are quite rare, and the pair, if sold together, would net you almost as much as your initial stipend. I spent that much tinkering and testing myself in those rooms and corridors, did I? Nictus asked, receiving a simple sort of yes of the light bobbing up and down in reply. You need a name too. I'm going to call you Ra. You don't mind, do you? To make it official would cost you 1,250 points. But in the meantime, aspirant, you may call me whatever serves you best. Do you need help deciding on things to purchase? I am at a little loss for words. There's so much listed in such a dizzying array. I'm not even sure what I should start with. To be perfectly honest, you have so little points I doubt you should even bother. Anything most aspirants would purchase to set up a home or even start planning for one is simply out of your reach. What about this? This call someone. Nictus flicked through the selection as if he'd been doing it his entire life. This seems to be about the right amount of points. That would be a random person, as you don't know anyone, and you haven't traded with anyone or fought them in the trials. Otherwise, you'd have to pay hefty sums to narrow search results in your favor. But I can still do it if I want to, right? Nictus got another of those bobbing, "Yes, sir," replies from the shiny palm-sized Ra. Is there any cost to going back into the trials? No, aspirant, there is not. Also, any objects or items you carry on your person out of the final room can be brought into this space for much less than they can be bought from the market. Fuck it then, roll the die. I want to talk to a random person for 300 points. Nictus tapped the confirmation button without giving the idea another moment to traipse about in his head. As you wish, aspirant. Bringing up the screen now. Ra didn't so much make the screen appear as he became it and pulled himself off of one corner on the stuck in the middle of the air window into a totally different room and space beyond. Nictus took a moment to gaze behind it, showing the other view of the same room he was looking into. In his viewpoint, he saw another hovering little light, this one shining faintly yellow and pink above a slumbering form in a sleeping bag, and using a bundle of weapons wrapped in cloth for what had to have been the world's least comfortable pillow. "Go away, Sprinkle, I'm sleeping," a soft, silvery, smoky voice begged from beneath her covers. "It's very important, aspirant," Sprinkle insisted. "Someone has called you. They're waiting right now to speak to you. I told you the guild would call me back. Just had to wait on the dastardly fucks." The voluptuous woman threw off her blanket, revealing a wonderfully nude and attractive body hiding underneath. This is worth every point, Nictus thought to himself as he absorbed every last inch of her dark gray skin, scaled at certain places, elbows and flexing joints and such. Mixed-blooded Ophidian body. "Hello," he waved, instantly feeling like he might be intruding into someone else's privacy, now that he'd made his presence known. She jumped with a start, covering herself back up when she realized she was being watched. "Sorry, who are you? Are you new with the shivering swords?" She began trying to comb and manage a mop of tangled bed hair, rather awkwardly. "I have no idea who that is. I just chose to call someone at random. Screw it, I figured," Nictus replied, smiling with more than a little awkwardness hiding in his thoughts. "Oh, I've never been called randomly before. My first time, and by a handsome mixed-blood Ophidian as well. What are the chances? Let me get dressed and we can talk while I rinse and comb my hair." She pushed the view screen to look out over a small wash basin and a cozily but tastefully decorated single-roomed home beyond it. Nictus could see a small stove and dining area with a low table and pillows off to one side, some flat cushions for lounging with a dozen books neatly stacked behind it, as well as a large, simple oil and canvas of a mountain range and a lake surrounded by meadows. Tasteful. She reappeared on screen, rinsing her long, untidy hair carefully in the basement just ahead of where she sat. "Name's Clatta. What's yours?" She still wasn't wearing all that much, just a loose, sleeveless white shirt that tapered off well above the gentle curve of her tailbone and hips, her naked rump flexing in the most delightful way every time she leaned over the water to squeeze out her hair. "It's Nictus. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Do you have a surname?" he asked as he tilted his head ever so slightly, as if the act would give him a better view of the side of her breast, filling out quite a bit of well-stretched shirt. From her sidelong, folded, seated position, Clatta turned every now and again, smirking at her guest. "I see the jackal part of you shines through in more than just your jet-black coloring. very handsome. Sadly, the mixing in my family happened a few generations back. I lack the new Jackal fashion of surnames. It's just Clatta. I use a designation to help people locate me. What's your name, hun? He so badly wanted to reach out and grab her, take her right then and there. But the way Clatta had grabbed the window, Nictus doubted that would work. Nictus Dagvir. The window shut after he'd said his name. He saw Clatta look more than a little distressed on her end as the display turned itself off. What in the shit is going on? Nictus reached out to where the view screen had just been, passing his hands mournfully through nothing. Sorry, sir. That was all the time your random call allowed for. I apologize for not telling you sooner. I did not want to interrupt the small amount of time you had to spend with whomever you contacted. How much does it cost to maintain her contact information? Clatta is extraordinarily far away from you, aspirant. While the price is cheap, the distance makes it much more expensive to maintain. Put me down for it. I'm going back in. Aspirant, I warn you, your funds are not enough to cover that expense. If you die in the trials, that will be the end of you. Even with the daggers? They are quite rare, both of them might cover the cost. But only if you sell them without being advertised and listed properly. That is not very common, and as expensive on such short notice as what you are asking me. It would be a gamble. Is there another way? Nictus asked, knowing he'd need something to hold on to, something to push him forward. There is, but it is painful and dangerous. He nodded for Ra to continue. You will still have to relinquish the daggers, leaving you little chance to succeed. You will bet your life and the flat market value of the daggers against your next attempt. But if you die for good. You have no funds to cover the cost of your revival. Do it, Ra. Are you sure, aspirant? Perhaps you didn't pick up on something Clatta said. I'm more Jackal than I am Ophidian. Us Jackals, we live for the challenge and yearn for the moment we will be tested to the absolute limit of our ability. Now do what I ask. Nictus exchanged the daggers in their sheaths, walking to the pedestal to transport him up into the next testament to his intellect, ability, and skill. And here it is once again. Our time together has come to a close. I know this one was a bit longer than most such stories, but I had to give it as much due as I could. Clutching Daggers is my all-time favorite extended series among stories from the heart of the Jakuls, and I can't bear to tell them unless they are ever so perfectly correct. As always, I have been your host, Lothran, and I leave you in Brumble's expert hands.
All right. Have a pleasant evening, everyone. Leave any and all questions and comments down below. Like and share to help us learn and grow. And feed hungry Brumble. That's me. And don't forget, we encourage each and every one of you to stay safe out there. Goodbye, everybody. Good night and good luck.